This is our strategy on the page. Really importantly, we talk about this a lot, we kind of give it lip service, children at the centre. It is children at the centre. In any education system, the unit of change is the classroom. You can do whatever you want in a system level. If it doesn't get through to what goes on between a teacher and a kid in the classroom, it's not going to make any change. It's not going to make any difference to kids. Everything that we do, I want to be focused on the impact that it has. Talked a lot about that, and even in things like this idea of evaluating for impact. I see lots of things that come across my desk and say, well, we made this investment, we did this thing, and teachers now feel more confident teaching this or doing this. Okay, that's not enough. That's necessary, but it's not sufficient. I want to know that because teachers are confident in doing that thing, it actually makes a difference in the classroom, makes a difference to kids. Probably the best example of that is the idea of growth mindset. Almost every teacher in the Western world knows about the idea of growth mindset. But what we see is it's not actually enacted sophisticatedly in very many classrooms across the world. And so it doesn't have an impact. And you can see in some of the research it doesn't have an impact because people don't actually enact it. They know about it, but they don't enact it. Knowing about it's not enough. Enacting it is what we need. Today we're talking about that effective learners part. These four parts are not separate, as I say. I think there's one story, interconnected story here, but today we're going to focus on effective learners. And so, what we're thinking about is, we know we want our students to achieve, but it's not enough to have achieving students. We need to have effective learners. For students to make the most of what we're offering, for students to be able to go out into their lives and be learners. And we know that to go into their futures, they are going to have to be effective learners. Being an effective learner is becoming more and more important compared to being a knower. Being a knower used to get you somewhere in the world. These days it doesn't so much. And I think particularly something like the role of artificial intelligence and how that's going to change education and going to change the world, it puts even more of a demand on us to make sure that our young people are effective learners in the future. And then the last bit that I really did want to pick up on was this idea of the metacognition and self-regulation. Still, where to start with this? 5-10 years ago, if you were to say to an educator, what's the most impactful thing you can do to make a difference to students' learning? What would you have said? So maybe metacognition, feedback. So we talked a lot about feedback. One of the interesting things that's happened over the last 5 years, I think, when the research has come out, and this is a good example of it. This teaching and learning toolkit, lots of you know this, I know, from the Education Endowment Foundation, and there's the Australian version that Education for Learning, Evidence for Learning have put out. And so lots of you will be familiar with this, and what you know is that what they've done is they've taken hundreds and hundreds of studies. Now, one of the ways in which this is different from other meta-analyses is that this one, it has to be done in a classroom or an education environment. It can't be a piece of research that was done with 4 researchers and 3 kids. It has to actually have been done in an education setting. And so I've ordered these by impact. So what these things show, so it's from the UK, so they've got a pound sign, but it's how expensive is this thing, what's the strength of the evidence, and how much difference does it make? And the way that they do this on this, the way they express their effect size here, we're getting more and more familiar with this, of course, is that in 12 months, you'd expect 12 months of learning for kids. If you start doing this thing, whatever it is, and you weren't doing it before, if you start doing this thing, how much difference does it make over that 12 months? At the top of the list, these things are incredibly impactful. We've got 7, 6, 5 months in a year. And a school year isn't even 12 months. So we've got a 7-month impact within a kind of 11-month schooling. And so what you see is feedback actually now coming lower down the list. It's quite interesting. In John Hattie's new book, what he does really usefully is separates out different kinds of feedback. And you can see that some is less impactful and some is more impactful. This is kind of on average. And what we do here is, what it does is it goes down the list, some other impactful things that we can put into place. A bunch of things that we do. Phonics, you can see there, really strong evidence, really big impact. It's not the top of the list, but it's really important. We should keep hold of that. You know, and the list goes on and on and on until you get down to the bottom and you get things like repeating a year. That actually sends kids backwards. So you do an extra year and you go back 3 months. And probably no surprises there for us. So just coming back to the metacognition and self-regulation, you know, this meta-analysis showing us that, so there's 250-something studies behind this. And what they've done is drawn out the stories behind the metacognition and self-regulation. There's just a couple of things I want to pick out.